Depending on how old you are, your experience with social media may be a little bit different from the people around you. I first got involved in social media back when MySpace was actually a big popular thing. It was where we all learned how to express ourselves uniquely through a bunch of things that other people had produced. Once Facebook came around, it really became interesting because then it became less about you just expressing yourself and became more about you communicating things. And ever since then, social media has really taken on that kind of persona. It's all about you communicating stuff. So, I mean, for example, you have, Facebook that is all about your relatives communicating all of their opinions that they think it's really important that you hear about on everything going on around them. You have Instagram for all of the individuals who think that they are a lot more attractive than they are and that everybody cares about their fashion sense. You have LinkedIn for your coworkers that really need hobbies. You have things like Tinder for individuals that are probably going to end up in counseling with me later on. And then you have TikTok. What do we say about TikTok? TikTok has given everybody this megaphone where they can speak all the things that they think are very, very insightful or smart, and some things that are kind of funny too. I don't personally have a TikTok account, so if you look around, you're not going to find me on there, but I do really get into this genre of video where you have people kind of putting compilations together or breaking down different things that people will say on TikTok on a variety of subjects. And especially if it's a subject that you know about, then these can become very, very interesting. And so individuals who are talking about religious beliefs is fascinating, and it's not fascinating for any really good reason. It's usually for these really terrible reasons where you have people who are saying things that I think in their hearts they really believe might help somebody, but in fact are very bad theology. And this is where we get into something that I want to kind of unpack here, which is, how do we guard our own hearts against some of the different influences of this world that may try to drive us in a bad direction? We kind of have this Jeremiah 17:9 verse that pops up once again, as it does in so many of our lessons, which is, the heart is above all things deceitful. Who can understand it? The heart is going to want what it wants. And because of that, we have to be very careful what we choose to expose our hearts to, because we may find individuals who say things that we resonate with that are actually saying things that can be damaging to our relationship with God. And in doing that, it can actually damage our ability to do what God has called us to do. Now, if you sit here and look at the different types of, kind of false religious authorities that you may have in your life, they fall into a lot of different categories. You could put them into several different kinds of labels, but I have 4 of them for you. The first that I would give you is you have individuals that are kind of the gatekeepers, right? So you have these individuals who are doing things because they have a personal experience, and because they have this experience, they think that you too must have this experience in order to truly experience God. You can see this especially in people who have had bluntly very rough lives. I mean, people who have very dramatic testimonies, and it's understandable that they went through something amazing and they want you to experience the amazingness, but sometimes in doing that, they start tilting the pendulum in an unhealthy direction where they start saying, well, you too must experience all these bad things or else you don't really know who Christ is. And if you're not careful, it can really come across as this holier than thou type of thing. Now, you also have these individuals who bluntly are just kind of ignorant about the world around them. I mean, and the things of the Bible, so what they do is they may have passion, they may have enthusiasm where they want to talk about God, but maybe they don't really have all of the information that's needed to be able to educate somebody else. You also have individuals that are just flat out argumentative, so you have these individuals that they just want to argue, they want to be pedantic and not in kind of a fun way. Don't get me wrong. I love being pedantic about all kinds of things, but I at least like to think that whenever I'm the actually guy, that I'm doing it trying to be kind of funny or something. But there's a lot of people who they love to divide different people based on whether you have the correct answer to a question that, if we were going to be honest with ourselves, isn't explicitly laid out in the Bible. And the last one we have are people who are the humanists, people who really try to view the Bible through their own worldly philosophies, or behind the way, through the way that they want to experience things. These are individuals who, when they open up the Bible, they can't put their own biases and worldviews and politics aside, and so they take all those things into their Bible study, and they have to filter everything or fit everything that God is telling them into their worldview. And you can imagine how that leads you in all kinds of crazy directions. These are 4 categories that maybe not encompass every type of false teaching, but they're a good place to start, especially when you start looking at a lot of things that are out there in social media, because you find these different types of people, and they're not all bad people per se. I mean, some of them, like I said, are really trying to give to others a truth that they feel that they know, but they're doing it in a way that might be damaging. And here's the deal. We can't control that. We can't control that there are going to be these other people that are going to espouse the different views that they have. What we can do is to guard our own heart, to make certain that we can identify when individuals may have a shaky foundation to their beliefs or to their theology, and then guarding ourselves so that we don't hear something that maybe we want to believe is true, but we know in fact is not actually what God communicates to us through His scriptures. Now we can kind of shift things a little bit, because those 4 categories very much apply to just any individual who kind of flatters himself as somebody who has that megaphone and they want to try to communicate theological truth to other individuals. But I want to focus a little bit more on the motivations of these individuals, because that's something else to watch out for. They say when you're doing sermons and lessons, a good pastor is going to have 3s, and I gave you 4 things last time. So I'm going to buy one of those back this time, and I'm only going to give you 2. So there's 2 different things that I would say we really got to watch out for. And this applies, by the way, to a lot of the big pastors that we see out there, as well as, small pastors. I mean, even myself as well. Nobody is immune. We have to watch out who the influences are in our lives. When you look for somebody who it seems to have their heart in the right place, the first thing you want to see is this like monkey see, monkey do kind of attitude in these individuals, that they need to be bent towards reflecting what Christ reflected. And if you have individuals who say that they're an authority in the scriptures and theology and all that, but yet you look at how they are living their life and how they are communicating and treating other individuals, and that is not reflective of the love and the grace and compassion that Christ showed, then that's a red flag. I mean, we're all flawed individuals, and I'll throw it out there. Some people in the Bible who God was definitely with who are pretty sarcastic, but still, it is a good symptom, so we need to be aware of that. One of the other things that I would point out, the second thing, are you want to see individuals who recognize that this position of teaching, whether it's in an official capacity or anything else, is not something that is about status and celebrity. It's a humbling and a sacrificial type of calling. And so when you see individuals that, their motivation for trying to reach other individuals seems to be driven more by the amount of popularity or status or any other physical worldly thing that they can get, that is something that we need to be cautious of. It doesn't necessarily mean that everything they're saying is bad. I mean, I think that there have been many individuals that I disagree with severely theologically who have said some very beneficial thing and through God has worked through. However, we need to ensure that when we are listening to somebody, we are not seduced by persuasive arguments, or we're not, influenced by charismatic personalities or kind of glossy veneers of what we think a holy person should really be. We need to ensure that we are leaning on individuals that reflect the nature of Christ, who they themselves exude a sense of humility about their calling and who feel that weight of what God is calling them to do whenever they are teaching. And that's something that, especially when we start talking about influences that we consume through these little sound bites, on the internet and through social media and whatnot, it's very, very, very hard to discern that. Even more reason for us to, once again, guard our hearts. Guarding your heart isn't just about you making certain that you can get as much blessing as possible. It's actually a part of you being effective as a Christian. I want you to think about it this way. If you wanted to be a doctor, but then you went to some cut-rate university that, has just mails you out degrees, the kind that you used to see in the middle of the night in the 90s, that would advertise, all these, TV, VCR repair and stuff like that. Or maybe a university that I really don't respect, like ODU. We can't do that. Hey, so I'm editing my video right now. I apologize to the Crack Against Old Dominion University. I have no problem with it. The Monarchs are perfectly fine. It's just some dumb joke I've always said, but just know that if you went to the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, I do not respect you. You would have to acknowledge that going to that cut rate place for your source of truth and knowledge is not going to lead to you being an effective doctor and being able to help people. And the same is true when it comes to us trying to, receive these messages and truths of the Bible. If we are not guarding our hearts and we're not using our discernment to ensure that we are getting scriptural truth when we are learning or being influenced, then we are actually doing a disservice to the individuals that God may put in our lives for us to help out. I mean, if you're influenced by somebody who says that, we should just accept all things are permissible, so we should just be okay with it. There may be an amount of discipleship that you don't end up doing because you've been influenced to think that, well, I don't need to discipleship somebody through whatever this thing is that they're struggling with because these various influencers told me it's perfectly okay. On the flip side, there may be individuals that if we're influenced by these individuals that are very harsh and very argumentative, we may trick ourselves into thinking that there are people that we don't have to be compassionate towards because maybe they don't fit the following qualifications or some other kind of crazy theology. Regardless of the precise scenarios, you can see how having bad truth ingrained in our hearts can actually lead us to not being available for the types of callings and the types of blessings that God has in store for us. So it's important for us to carefully ensure that we are absorbing things that are truth and doing our own Bible study and keeping ourselves and our own minds and our eyes and ears accountable so that as we sit here and we consume all of the various influences around us, we know that we are taking in something that is based on Christ and is based on Christ's teachings, not flawed philosophies of this world. That's the lesson I have for today. I hope you were able to get something out of it. And until we can meet again, God bless.